Ma'am, you clearly don't belong here. Security will escort you out immediately. The words sliced through the marble lobby of Manhattan's most prestigious hotel like a blade through silk. The woman speaking wore a crisp white blouse and a smirk that could freeze champagne. Her target? A poised black woman in an impeccable charcoal suit, holding a leather briefcase worth more than most people's monthly salary. What happened next would destroy careers, spark nationwide conversations, and prove that sometimes the most devastating revenge comes wrapped in perfect composure. These black stories of workplace discrimination happen every day across America. But this particular moment would become one of those real-life stories that changes everything. Have you ever been judged by your appearance before anyone knew your qualifications? What this woman did next will restore your faith in justice. 3:07 p.m., the Meridian Grand Hotel, Manhattan. Diana Carter adjusted her Hermes briefcase and checked her Patek Philippe watch. 8 minutes until her quarterly board meeting. 8 minutes to cross a lobby that should have taken 30 seconds. The problem stood directly in her path. Brittany Walsh, the hotel's guest services manager, had planted herself between Diana and the executive elevator bank like a designer-dressed sentinel. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe bun that matched her expression. "Excuse me," Diana said, her voice carrying the quiet authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "I need to access the executive floors." Brittany's eyes traveled from Diana's shoes to her briefcase, lingering with obvious skepticism. "The executive floors are restricted to registered guests and authorized personnel only." "I understand the policy. Do you?" Brittany's smile was razor thin. "Because our clientele expects a certain atmosphere. I'm sure you can appreciate that." Around them, the lobby hummed with afternoon activity. Business travelers checked their phones. Tourists snapped photos of the crystal chandeliers. A young woman near the concierge desk had her phone raised, live streaming to her followers. Diana reached into her briefcase and withdrew a platinum card that caught the light like liquid metal. "I believe this should suffice." Brittany barely glanced at the American Express Centurion card before shaking her head. "Anyone can have a credit card. What I need is proof that you belong in this establishment." The words hung in the air like smoke. Diana's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. She pulled out her phone and began recording. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" Diana's voice remained perfectly level. "I want to make sure I understand your position correctly." Brittany's cheeks flushed, but she doubled down. "I said this establishment has standards. We cater to a specific demographic, and frankly, you're making our guests uncomfortable." The live streaming woman had moved closer, her phone capturing every word. Her viewer count climbed steadily. 15,000, 20,000, 25,000. Comments flooded the screen. "This is insane. Is this really happening in 2024? Someone needs to record this." But Diana had already thought of that. Her phone was positioned perfectly, capturing Brittany's face and the hotel's distinctive marble columns in the background. "I'd like to speak with your supervisor," Diana said. Brittany straightened her shoulders. "I am the supervisor on duty, and I'm telling you that unless you're a registered guest or have specific business here, you need to leave." "I do have specific business here." "What kind of business?" Diana checked her watch again. 3:10 p.m. 5 minutes. "The kind that requires access to the executive conference room." Brittany laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "The executive conference room? Do you know what that space costs per hour? Do you know the kind of people who use that room?" "I have some idea." "I doubt that." Brittany gestured toward the main entrance. "Look, I'm trying to be polite here, but you're clearly in the wrong place. There's a perfectly nice Holiday Inn 6 blocks south. That might be more suitable." The live stream viewer count hit 50,000. Comments were pouring in so fast they blurred together. Someone had started a hashtag. Hotel discrimination. Diana's phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Board meeting, conference room A, 3:15 p.m. She dismissed the notification and continued recording. So, to be clear, you're refusing me access to the executive floors because you don't believe I belong here. Is that correct? I'm refusing you access because you haven't provided adequate identification or proof of business. Even though I've shown you my credit card? Anyone can get a credit card. This particular card has a $50,000 0-cent annual fee. Brittany's expression wavered for just a moment. Then she regained her composure. I don't care if it has $1 million fee. Policy is policy. A security guard approached from across the lobby. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and looked uncomfortable with whatever conversation he'd been asked to join. Everything all right here, Ms. Walsh? He asked. Marcus, this woman is refusing to leave. She's insisting she has business in the executive conference room, but she won't provide proper identification. Marcus looked between them, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. Ma'am, if you could just show us some... Diana reached for her wallet, then paused. Her phone was still recording. The live stream was still running, and somewhere in the hotel's extensive security system, cameras were capturing every moment of this exchange. She had a choice to make. Show her identification now and end this quietly, or let it play out and see exactly how far they were willing to take their assumptions. Her watch read 3:12 p.m. 3 minutes until the most important board meeting of the quarter. 3 minutes until 12 executives would be waiting for her in Conference Room A to discuss the company's expansion plans and diversity initiatives. 3 minutes until she had to make a decision that would change everything. Diana slipped her wallet back into her briefcase without removing her ID. I'd prefer to speak with the general manager, she said. Brittany's nostrils flared. The general manager is in meetings all afternoon. Marcus, please escort this woman to the exit. The security guard shifted uncomfortably. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. I'm not going anywhere. The lobby had grown quieter. Conversations died as guests became aware of the confrontation unfolding near the executive elevators. Phones appeared in hands like flowers blooming after rain. The live streaming woman had moved even closer. Her viewer count now exceeded 75,000. Comments scrolled by in an endless stream. This is disgusting. What hotel is this? Someone needs to call the news. Is this real? A businessman in an expensive suit stopped mid-stride to watch. A couple with shopping bags from high-end boutiques whispered to each other while their teenage daughter recorded with her phone. Diana's expression remained serene, but her hand found her phone again. Not to record this time, but to send a text message. 2. Legal Department. Subject: Urgent. Discrimination. Incident. Message: Document everything. Full investigation required. Civil rights violation in progress. The message sent with a soft chime. Ma'am, Marcus said, his voice gentler than Brittany's but no less firm. I really need you to come with me. On what grounds? Trespassing. I'm standing in a public lobby. It's private property. Open to the public for business purposes. Brittany stepped forward. You're disrupting our guests and creating a scene. That's grounds for removal. Diana gestured to the growing crowd. I'm standing quietly. They're the ones creating a scene. Another security guard materialized from the direction of the gift shop. This one was younger, with eager eyes and a hand that kept drifting toward his radio. Problem here? He asked. No problem, Diana said before anyone else could speak. I'm waiting for an elevator. She's been asked to leave, Brittany snapped, multiple times. And I've explained that I have business here. The young security guard, his name tag read Trevor, looked to Marcus for guidance. Marcus looked tired. Ma'am, what kind of business? A board meeting. Trevor laughed before he could stop himself. A board meeting? Here? Conference room A, 15th floor. The laughter died. Trevor's eyes darted to Brittany, who had gone very still. That's, Trevor started, then stopped. That's what? Diana asked. That's the Carter Hospitality Suite, he finished quietly. Brittany shot him a look that could have melted steel. It doesn't matter what suite it is, she doesn't have authorization. But something had changed in the dynamic. Trevor was studying Diana's face with new interest. Marcus had taken a small step back. Diana's phone buzzed again. This time it was a call. "Excuse me," she said, answering. "Diana Carter." The name hung in the air like a dropped glass, waiting to shatter. Brittany's face went through several color changes, pink, to red, to white, to green. "Yes, I'm running a few minutes late," Diana continued into the phone. "There's been a minor issue in the lobby." "No, nothing that can't be resolved. I'll be up shortly." She ended the call and looked expectantly at the three people surrounding her. Trevor was backing away slowly, as if distance might protect him from whatever was about to happen. Marcus was staring at Diana with dawning recognition. Brittany was frozen, her mouth slightly open, her face the color of old newspaper. "Now then," Diana said pleasantly, "about that elevator access." The live stream had reached 100,000 viewers. Someone had identified the hotel and started calling the main number. The hashtag, hotel discrimination, was trending in 3 states. A guest services associate hurried over from the front desk, her face flushed with exertion and panic. "Mrs. Walsh," she whispered urgently. "There's been a mistake. A big mistake." "Not now, Sarah." "But Ms. Walsh, the calls won't stop. People are saying we're discriminating against." "I said, not now." Sarah retreated, but not far. She hovered at the edge of the group, her eyes darting between Diana and her phone, which was lighting up with notifications. Diana checked her watch. 3:14 p.m. "I have 1 minute to make my meeting," she said. "Are you going to let me pass, or shall I explain to the board why their quarterly review is delayed?" "The board?" Brittany's voice cracked slightly. "The board of directors, Carter Hospitality Group. You know, the company that owns this hotel." The words fell like stones into still water, sending ripples of realization through the crowd. Trevor was now halfway across the lobby, trying to disappear into the afternoon check-in crowd. Marcus had removed his hand from his radio and was studying the floor tiles with intense concentration. Sarah had her phone pressed to her ear, speaking in rapid, urgent whispers. And Brittany stood frozen in the center of it all, finally beginning to understand the magnitude of her mistake. The elevator bank chimed softly. The executive elevator, the one Diana had been trying to reach for the past 7 minutes, opened its polished steel doors. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, saw the crowd, and approached with quick, nervous steps. "Ms. Carter?" he called out. "The board is waiting. Is everything all right?" Diana smiled for the first time since entering the lobby. "Everything's fine, James. Just a small misunderstanding about building access." James, the hotel's assistant general manager, looked around the lobby, taking in the security guards, the phones, the live stream, and Brittany's stricken expression. His face went through the same color changes Brittany's had, minus the recovery. "Oh no," he whispered. "Oh no, oh no, oh no." The lobby fell silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning and the distant ding of elevator bells. James stood, frozen, his face cycling through expressions like a broken traffic light. Recognition. Horror. The desperate hope that he was hallucinating. Diana Carter, CEO of Carter Hospitality Group, owner of 43 luxury hotels across North America, including the one they were standing in, adjusted her briefcase strap and stepped toward the elevator. "Shall we go up?" she asked James, her voice carrying the same calm authority it had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "Mrs. Carter, James's voice cracked like ice on a lake. I had no idea you were in your lobby, being harassed by your staff, having my civil rights violated on camera in front of 100,000 people. The number was conservative. The live stream had gone viral across multiple platforms. Hotel discrimination was trending nationally. The hotel's phone system was overwhelmed with calls. Diana turned to face Brittany, who looked like she was calculating the distance to the nearest exit. Brittany, isn't it? Diana's voice was silk over steel. I believe we were discussing hotel policies, something about standards and demographics. Brittany opened her mouth, but no sound emerged. Her hands trembled as she tried to smooth her already perfect hair. Cat got your tongue? The live-streaming woman had moved closer, her phone capturing every nuance of Brittany's collapse. Come on, tell the CEO why she doesn't belong in her own hotel. I didn't know, Brittany finally managed. You didn't know what? That I was the CEO? Or that discrimination is illegal, regardless of who you're discriminating against? Diana's phone buzzed with a text from her legal department. Press release drafted. Civil rights attorneys on standby. HR wants a full report. She dismissed the notification and continued looking at Brittany, who seemed to be shrinking with each passing second. Here's what you did know, Diana said, her voice never rising above conversational level. You knew I was a black woman in an expensive suit with a $50,000 credit card, asking for elevator access. You knew I was polite, well-dressed, and clearly belonged in a business environment. But you decided that none of that mattered because of what I looked like. The crowd had grown. Hotel guests lined the mezzanine level, looking down at the scene unfolding below. Staff members peered out from behind reception desks and concierge stations. Marcus, the older security guard, had his radio in his hand but seemed afraid to use it. Trevor had disappeared entirely, probably into the staff break room where he was updating his resume. Sarah, the guest services associate, was still on her phone, but her whispered conversation had taken on the tone of someone explaining a natural disaster to their supervisor. James, Diana said, turning to the assistant general manager. How long has Ms. Walsh been employed here? 18 months, he answered automatically, then looked like he wanted to swallow the words. And in those 18 months, has she received our diversity and inclusion training? Yes, ma'am. All management staff complete the program within their first 90 days. Excellent. So she was fully aware of company policy regarding discrimination. James nodded miserably. And she was aware of the legal implications of denying service based on race? Another nod. Perfect. Deanna's smile was sharp enough to cut diamonds. That establishes knowledge and intent. My attorneys will be pleased. Brittany found her voice. Miss Carter, I want to apologize. I made a terrible mistake. If I could just... Oh, you're going to apologize. But not to me. Diana gestured toward the phone still recording, the live stream still broadcasting, the crowd still watching. You're going to apologize to them, to the 200,000 people who watched you demonstrate exactly why this industry still needs civil rights legislation. To every black woman who's ever been made to feel like she doesn't belong somewhere she has every right to be. Brittany's face crumpled. Please, I need this job. I have student loans, rent. You should have thought of that before you decided to play racial gatekeeper in my lobby. Deanna's phone rang. She glanced at the screen. It was her board chair, probably wondering where she was. Excuse me, she said, answering. Harold? Yes, I'm downstairs. No, we're going to need to adjust the agenda. We have a personnel issue that requires immediate attention. She paused, listening. Yes, it's being live-streamed. No, I couldn't have planned better publicity for our diversity initiatives if I'd tried. We'll discuss it upstairs. She ended the call and looked around the lobby one more time. The crowd had tripled in size. Hotel guests were recording their own videos, adding their commentary to the growing online conversation. A news van pulled up outside, its satellite dish already extending toward the sky. "James, I need you to do something for me," Diana said. "Anything, Ms. Carter." "I need you to preserve all security footage from the past hour. Every camera angle, every timestamp. Our legal department will want copies." "Yes, ma'am." "And I need you to compile a list of every employee who witnessed this incident and failed to intervene." James's face went even paler. "Ma'am, I'm not sure." "I'm not asking for opinions, James. I'm giving instructions." She turned to Marcus, who straightened unconsciously. "Marcus, you showed more professionalism than your colleague, but you still attempted to remove a customer based solely on another employee's biased assessment." "That's going in my report." Marcus nodded stiffly. "Understood, ma'am." "Good. Now, I believe I have a board meeting to attend." Diana walked toward the elevator, her heels clicking against the marble floor with the rhythm of inevitability. As the elevator doors began to close, she looked out at the lobby one final time. Brittany was crying openly now, surrounded by phones and cameras and the wreckage of her career. James was speaking rapidly into his radio, probably alerting the general manager that his afternoon was about to get much worse. And somewhere in the crowd, a dozen people were already writing the social media posts that would turn this incident into a case study taught in business schools across the country. The elevator doors closed with a soft whisper. But Diana's work was just beginning. The 15th floor of the Meridian Grand housed the Executive Conference Suite, a masterpiece of glass and steel that offered panoramic views of Manhattan's skyline. On any other day, the room would have buzzed with discussion of quarterly profits and expansion strategies. Today, it hummed with the tension of impending corporate crisis. 12 board members sat around the polished mahogany table, their faces reflecting various degrees of concern, curiosity, and barely contained panic. Harold Westbrook, the board chair, had his phone pressed to his ear, speaking in the clipped tones of someone managing a public relations nightmare in real time. "Yes, I understand it's viral," he was saying. "What I need to know is our liability exposure." "Legal says what?" Christ. Deanna entered the room at exactly 3:22 p.m., 7 minutes late by her standards, which meant the situation downstairs had been exactly as serious as it appeared. "Harold," she said, taking her seat at the head of the table, "I assume you've been briefed on this afternoon's events?" Harold ended his call and set his phone down with the care of someone handling unstable explosives. "Diana, please, tell me there's some context we're missing here." "There is, but not the kind that helps us." She activated the room's presentation system with a gesture. The wall-mounting screens came to life, displaying real-time social media analytics that painted a picture of viral infamy. Hotel discrimination, 2.3 million mentions in the past hour. Sentiment analysis, 89% negative toward Meridian. Grand stock price, down 4.2% in after-hams trading. Trending, related terms, boycott, lawsuit, racism, CEO. Our guest services manager, Brittany Walsh, refused me access to this building based solely on her assessment of my appearance, Diana began, her voice carrying the same measured tone she'd used in the lobby. She explicitly stated that I didn't belong here, suggested I try a Holiday Inn instead, and had security attempt to remove me. Board member Patricia Chen raised her hand slightly. "Diana, surely there was some misunderstanding." "Patricia, there were no misunderstandings. There were civil rights violations, recorded on multiple devices, witnessed by hundreds of people, and broadcast live to over 200,000 viewers." She clicked to the next slide, which showed a breakdown of legal exposure. "Our attorneys have identified 14 separate causes of action under federal civil rights law: the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Civil Rights Act of 1968, New York State Human Rights Law, and New York City Human Rights Law. The room fell silent except for the whispered curse from Harold. Potential damages range from $500,000 0 cents to $2,300,000 0 cents, not including punitive damages, attorney fees, or settlement costs, Diana continued. That's assuming we can keep this out of federal court. Board member Marcus Sullivan, not to be confused with the security guard downstairs, leaned forward. What are our options for damage control? Limited. Diana clicked to the next slide. The incident was live-streamed by multiple parties. Traditional crisis management strategies are ineffective when the evidence is already public and permanent. The screens now displayed a cascade of social media posts, news articles, and commentary pieces that had appeared in the past hour. Hotel discrimination was trending, alongside Carter Hospitality and CEO. CNN picked up the story 18 minutes ago, Diana noted. Fox Business ran a segment 12 minutes ago. The Wall Street Journal has a reporter in our lobby right now. Harold rubbed his temples. What's our exposure beyond this property? System-wide reputation damage. Our Meridian brand operates in 43 locations. Early social media analysis suggests calls for boycotts across all properties. She clicked again. The next slide showed preliminary financial projections that made several board members wince. Conservative estimates suggest a 15–20% decline in bookings over the next quarter if we handle this poorly. That translates to approximately $47 million, 0 cents in lost revenue. And if we handle it well? Asked Patricia. If we handle it perfectly, we might limit the damage to 8–10%. But perfectly requires immediate, decisive action that demonstrates genuine commitment to change, not just damage control. The presentation shifted to show a detailed timeline of the incident, synchronized with social media engagement metrics. The discrimination occurred over a 7-minute period, Diana explained. During that time, our employee doubled down on her position despite multiple opportunities to reconsider. She demonstrated knowledge of company policy, willful violation of civil rights law, and deliberate humiliation of a customer. Board member David Kim spoke up. What about the other employees involved? Assistant General Manager James Morrison showed appropriate concern once he understood the situation, but his response was reactive rather than proactive. Security guard Marcus Thompson demonstrated some professionalism but still participated in the attempted removal. Security guard Trevor Mills fled the scene entirely. Diana paused the presentation on a slide titled Personnel Actions. Brittany Walsh will be terminated for cause, effective immediately. Her actions constitute gross misconduct under Section 7.3 of the Employee Handbook, willful violation of company diversity policy, and potential criminal civil rights violations. She's already been fired? Harold asked. She will be, as soon as this meeting concludes. I wanted board approval before taking action that might affect our legal position. What about the others? James Morrison will receive additional training and a formal reprimand. His file will reflect this incident, but termination isn't warranted based on his conduct. Marcus Thompson will undergo mandatory bias training and performance review. Trevor Mills will be terminated for abandoning his post during a security incident. Diana clicked to the final slide. Systemic response. But personnel actions alone won't address the underlying issues this incident has exposed. We need comprehensive policy reforms that demonstrate our commitment to preventing future discrimination. The board leaned forward as Deanna outlined her strategy. First, immediate implementation of a zero-tolerance discrimination policy with a 24-hour anonymous reporting hotline. Second, mandatory quarterly bias training for all management staff, with annual certification requirements. Third, installation of AI-powered monitoring systems in our security cameras to flag potential discrimination incidents in real time. Patricia raised an eyebrow. AI monitoring? Is that even legal? Completely legal for pattern recognition and incident flagging. We're not recording conversations or violating privacy. We're identifying behavioral patterns that suggest discriminatory treatment. What's the cost? Harold asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer wouldn't be pleasant. $2,100,000, 0 cents annually across all properties. But consider the alternative. Our potential liability for this single incident exceeds that figure. Diana stood and walked to the window, looking down at the crowd of reporters and protesters that had gathered on the sidewalk below. This incident happened because we failed to create systems that prevent discrimination, she said. We relied on policies and training that clearly weren't sufficient. We trusted individual employees to overcome their biases without providing them with the tools and oversight necessary to ensure success. She turned back to face the board. The question isn't whether we can afford to implement these changes. The question is whether we can afford not to. Harold looked around the table at his fellow board members, reading their expressions like a poker player calculating odds. In favor of Diana's proposed personnel actions and policy reforms? 12 hands went up. Motion carries unanimously. Harold's relief was palpable. Diana, you have full authority to proceed. Diana's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant. Brittany Walsh wants to speak with you personally. Says she has information about other incidents. She showed the message to Harold, who grimaced. Handle it however you think best, he said. At this point, we're entirely in crisis management mode. Diana nodded and began packing her briefcase. I'll be downstairs dealing with the immediate situation. The rest of you should prepare for extensive media inquiries over the next 48 hours. As she headed toward the elevator, Patricia called out, Deanna, for what it's worth, I'm sorry this happened to you. Diana paused at the doorway. Don't be sorry for me, Patricia. Be sorry for every customer who's experienced this kind of treatment when they didn't have the power to fight back. The elevator doors closed behind her, carrying her back down to a lobby that would never look quite the same again. The lobby had transformed into a media circus. News crews lined the sidewalk outside while reporters interviewed guests, employees, and anyone willing to share their thoughts on camera. The hashtag Hotel Discrimination now had 4.7 million mentions across all platforms. Diana stepped out of the elevator to find James Morrison waiting for her, his face the color of fresh concrete. Ms. Carter, I prepared the termination paperwork for Ms. Walsh, he said, holding out a folder with trembling hands. She's requested a meeting with you before security escorts her out. Where is she now? Employee break room, under supervision. Deanna nodded. And the media situation? Our public relations firm is here. They're recommending a press conference within the hour. Good. Have them prepare a statement, but I'll review it before anything goes public. She walked through the lobby, noting how staff members straightened when they saw her, how guests whispered and pointed, how the very air seemed charged with the electricity of change in motion. The employee break room was a small, windowless space behind the kitchen. Brittany Walsh sat at a round table, surrounded by boxes of tissues and the wreckage of her career. Her mascara had created dark trails down her cheeks, and her hands shook as she tried to drink from a paper cup. Ms. Walsh, Diana said, entering the room, I understand you wanted to speak with me. Brittany looked up, her eyes red and swollen. Ms. Carter, I need you to know that I'm not a racist person. I was just following what I thought were the hotel's unspoken policies. Unspoken policies? About the kind of guests we catered to, about maintaining the hotel's image. Brittany's voice was barely above a whisper. I was told during training that we needed to be selective about who we allowed in certain areas. Diana sat down across from her. Who told you that? My supervisor, the previous guest services manager. She said that wealthy guests expected a certain environment. Did she use those exact words? She said we needed to be careful about letting the wrong kind of people into the executive areas, that it could affect our reputation and our revenue. Diana pulled out her phone and began recording. I need you to repeat that exactly as you remember it. I don't want to get anyone else in trouble. Ms. Walsh, you're already in legal jeopardy for civil rights violations. Your cooperation in identifying systemic issues might be the only thing that prevents a federal investigation of your personal conduct. Brittany's hands stilled. What do you mean, federal investigation? The Department of Justice takes civil rights violations very seriously, especially when they're recorded and broadcast to millions of people. You could face criminal charges, personal liability, and federal prosecution. The color drained from Brittany's face. But if I cooperate, if you provide complete information about discriminatory practices and policies, our legal department will consider that cooperation when determining how to proceed. For the next 20 minutes, Brittany outlined a pattern of subtle but systematic discrimination that had been embedded in the hotel's culture for years. Informal dress codes that disproportionately affected minority guests, training sessions that emphasized maintaining standards in ways that encouraged racial profiling, performance reviews that rewarded staff for guest selectivity. Diana recorded every word, taking notes that would become the foundation for a comprehensive investigation into company-wide practices. Ms. Walsh, your employment is terminated effective immediately, Diana said when Brittany finished. You'll receive severance pay as outlined in your contract, but you're required to sign a cooperation agreement with our legal department. What happens now? Now you write a public apology that acknowledges your mistakes without making excuses. You participate in our internal investigation, and you hope that your cooperation demonstrates enough genuine remorse to prevent criminal prosecution. Brittany nodded, tears starting fresh. Ms. Carter, I really am sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know that I understand how wrong I was. Diana stood to leave. Mr. Walsh, your apology isn't what matters here. What matters is making sure this never happens to anyone else. An hour later, Diana stood behind a podium in the hotel's grand ballroom, facing a room full of reporters, cameras, and flashing lights. The press conference was being live-streamed across multiple platforms, ensuring that her response would reach the same viral audience that had witnessed the original incident. This afternoon, one of our employees engaged in discriminatory conduct that violated our company policies, civil rights law, and basic human decency, she began. I want to be absolutely clear, there is no excuse for what happened. There is no context that makes it acceptable. There is no explanation that justifies treating anyone with such disrespect. She paused, looking directly into the cameras. But I'm not here to simply apologize and move on. I'm here to announce concrete changes that will ensure this never happens again. The reforms she outlined were comprehensive and immediate. A $2,100,000 0 cents annual investment in bias prevention technology, including AI-powered monitoring systems and real-time incident detection. Mandatory quarterly training for all employees with annual certification requirements. A zero-tolerance policy for discrimination with automatic termination. More importantly, she announced the creation of an independent oversight board, chaired by civil rights attorneys and community leaders, with the power to investigate complaints and recommend systemic changes. We're also implementing financial accountability measures, Diana continued. Management bonuses will now be tied to diversity metrics and discrimination prevention. Employees who report discriminatory conduct will receive whistleblower protections and, when appropriate, financial rewards. A reporter raised her hand. Ms. Carter, critics might say these changes are just public relations gestures. How do we know they'll be permanent? Because I'm making them legally binding, Diana replied. These policies will be written into our corporate charter and our franchise agreements. Future violations will trigger automatic financial penalties and, in severe cases, franchise termination. The press conference lasted 45 minutes. Diana answered every question with the same directness she'd used in the lobby, acknowledging the company's failures while outlining specific steps for improvement. When it was over, she returned to her office on the 20th floor and pulled up the social media analytics one more time. The conversation had shifted. Hotel discrimination was still trending, but it was now accompanied by systemic change and accountability matters. Comments that had been uniformly critical 12 hours earlier now included praise for the company's response. More importantly, other hospitality companies were already announcing their own policy reviews and diversity initiatives, trying to get ahead of similar incidents at their properties. Diana's phone rang. It was her daughter, calling from her college dorm room. "Mom, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. Actually, I'm better than fine. The whole thing looked awful. I can't believe someone treated you like that." Diana looked out her window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the evening darkness. Somewhere out there, other people were facing discrimination. Other employees were making biased decisions. Other systems were failing to protect civil rights. But not here. Not anymore. "Sometimes awful things happen for important reasons," she told her daughter. "Sometimes they happen so we can fix what's broken." 6 months later, the Meridian Grand Hotel had become an unlikely symbol of corporate accountability and systematic change. The lobby that had once been the site of viral discrimination now hosted diversity training seminars for hospitality industry leaders from across the country. Diana Carter stood at the same spot where Brittany Walsh had tried to deny her access, now addressing a conference room full of executives who had come to learn from her company's transformation. "The technology we've implemented has prevented 47 potential discrimination incidents across our hotel chain," she reported to the assembled crowd. "Our AI monitoring system flags concerning behavior patterns and alerts management within 30 seconds. The numbers were impressive. Guest satisfaction scores had increased by 23% across all properties. Employee retention was up 18%. Most importantly, discrimination complaints had dropped to 0. But technology alone isn't the solution," Diana continued. "Cultural change requires sustained commitment at every level of leadership." The reforms had spread far beyond Carter Hospitality Group. Within 3 months of the viral incident, 16 major hotel chains had implemented similar monitoring systems. The Hospitality Industry Diversity Council, formed in direct response to the Meridian Grand incident, now included representatives from over 200 companies. Brittany Walsh had become an unexpected advocate for change. Her public apology video, viewed over 10 million times, included a detailed explanation of how unconscious bias training had helped her recognize her mistakes. She now worked for a nonprofit organization focused on bias prevention in customer service industries. "I was never taught to see my own prejudices," she said in a follow-up interview 6 months later. "The incident at the Meridian Grand was horrible, but it forced me to confront who I really was and who I wanted to become." The financial impact had been significant, but ultimately positive. Despite initial stock price drops and boycott threats, Carter Hospitality Group's revenue had increased by 12%, as travelers specifically chose hotels known for their inclusive policies. Harvard Business School now used the Meridian Grand incident as a case study in crisis management and systematic reform. Students analyzed how Diana's measured response had transformed a potential corporate disaster into a catalyst for industry-wide change. The key lesson, according to Professor Sarah Chen's business ethics course, is that true leadership requires the courage to address systemic problems rather than individual symptoms. The live stream that started it all had been archived by the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture as an example of how social media could drive civil rights progress in the digital age. These touching stories of transformation remind us that real-life stories of discrimination, while painful, can become powerful catalysts for justice. Black stories like Diana's demonstrate that, strategic thinking, and systematic change create more lasting impact than anger or revenge. Diana's approach had proved that the most effective response to prejudice wasn't emotional retaliation, but intelligent restructuring of the systems that allowed discrimination to flourish. Power isn't about punishment, she often said in her speaking engagements. It's about creating environments where everyone can thrive. The viral moment that could have destroyed careers and damaged reputations had instead spawned life stories of growth, learning, and genuine progress. Now it's your turn to make a difference. Share your own experiences with workplace discrimination in the comments below. Have you witnessed bias in customer service? Have you been treated unfairly because of your appearance or background? Subscribe for more inspiring stories of people who transformed prejudice into progress. Hit that notification bell and share this video with someone who needs to see that justice is possible when we fight bias with brilliance, not just outrage. Together, we can create a world where everyone truly belongs.